Bible was written by a bunch of white Christian men that just wanted to control women. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. This is what it says. The wife does not have power over her own body, but the husband.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl Michelle, and I am back with another video. And the topic of this video is going to be, does the Bible teach that women are the property of men? Does the Bible teach that men can just treat women however it is they want to? Because often you hear atheists saying that, back in those days, women were the property of men. So we're going to look at that. We're going to study that in this video today. Now, the first passage that we are going to be reading from is Song of Solomon, chapter 6. It says, "Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek him with thee? My beloved is gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies." And the reason why they're asking her, where's your beloved gone, is because in chapter 5, she couldn't find him. So they're saying, we will help you find him. Verse 3, "I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds among the lilies." This is a very powerful verse, because often people say that women back then, they were the property of their husbands. They could just be treated any kind of way. However, the Bible does not teach that. What the Bible teaches is that men and women are the property of each other. Notice she said, "I am my beloved's." That means I belong to him and he belongs to me. And the reason is because they are one. So therefore, if he mistreats her, he is mistreating himself. And we're going to read some other scriptures to prove this. But before I do that, I want to say that I have a playlist called the Apologetics playlist, because I know that there are some verses that people will try to pull to say, oh, you're lying, you're wrong. The Bible does teach that women can be treated any kind of way. And I have a playlist breaking down a lot of verses that people use this, including verses from Paul, such as slaves, obey your master, because we're going to get into some of Paul's writings today. Now let's read Genesis chapter 2. It says, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." And of course, a lot of people laugh at this. They're like, this is not scientifically possible. But there's a reason why God did this in the way that he did. It says in verse 24, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." That's the reason why the woman was taken from out of the man, so that they could be one in body and also one in spirit, as Paul says in Corinthians, which we're going to get to. Verse 25, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." So we can see that they were one. That's why when you read Song of Solomon chapter 6 about the husband and wife in that song, she says, "I am my beloved. I'm my beloved's, and he is mine." The Bible does not simply teach that, women are the property of men. The Bible teaches that men and women belong to each other. Now, let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 7. It says in verse 3, "Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband." So basically he's saying don't deny each other intimacy. Verse 4, "The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife." Why? Because we just read in Genesis chapter 2, Adam said that Eve was his bone of his bones and the flesh of his flesh. They are one in body and also one in spirit. So the Bible teaches that husbands and wives, they belong to one another. There's no such thing as, I just can treat you however I want to treat you, or I own you. No, you own each other, because as soon as you get married, you are one. Now let's look at Ephesians chapter 5. It says, "Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let wives be to their own husbands in everything." So a wife should be subject to her husband in the sense that she will serve him, as it says in Proverbs 31. It's not talking about abuse, that you can just treat her like a doormat. Because look what he says in verse 25, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it." What did Christ do? He sacrificed his body for us. Verse 26, "That he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. Why? We read in Genesis chapter 2 the reason why. He that loves his wife loves himself. For no man yet ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, even as the Lord the church. So every man takes care of his body, essentially, is what Paul is saying. You're not going to see any man that loves himself be abusive towards his own self. So why would he do the same thing to his wife? Verse 29. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. And then he goes on to quote what we read in Genesis chapter 2.